We begin Chapter 3, Growing Up Female, by looking at the biological nature of what it means to be female.
Whatever our biological makeup, none of us is fully a boy or a girl until that identity is made for us by our family and community and embraced by us. One's reproductive structures or plumbing is the signal, not the determinant, of gender identity. Around the world, both men and women prefer sons. If asked if they could only have one child, they want a male child between 80 and 90% of the time. We can see the results of how this impacts a society when we look at the one-child policy in China, where families were limited to one child per couple. This policy has been blamed for more families killing their daughters, who are traditionally seen as less than. Since the one-child policy was introduced, infant girls have become more likely to die than boys. Sexually selective abortions have been cited as a major cause of China's unusual imbalance, and now more than 33 million more men than women live in China. There are many ways that socialization contributes. Gender identity, which is placing oneself in a gender category, this is our core gender identity. Gender roles, which is how we behave appropriately for our gender, in other words, doing gender. What kind of religious stories did you grow up in? Did you grow up in an environment in which the goddess was the creator, the giver of life? Or were you raised in an environment where Eve was made from the rib of Adam? How does that story shape femaleness? Enormous meaning is assigned by societies, groups, and individuals to the female reproductive process of menstruation, pregnancy, childbirth, and lactation. Restrictions on women are often tied to these processes. The classification into these categories has big implications. Male, female, intersexual. Intersexual is someone born with mixed indicators of biological sex. And the human sex differentiation process has several steps, which we'll look at next. As you can see, there is a complex process to becoming either female or male. The gonads, for example, are the sex glands that eventually become the internal reproductive organs, either ovaries or testes. Everyone has a variety of sex hormones: estrogen, progesterone, androgens. Testosterone is the type of androgen that influences the male reproductive tract to begin to develop MIS. This is the hormone which blocks the development of female duct systems and causes it to degenerate. We used to wrongly believe that female development was the default development, which sounds rather passive. This is what we call the rhetoric of female absence, that femaleness was associated with the lack of something, and that maleness was associated with completeness. I mentioned before the fuzziness of classifications. So let's look at intersexuality. Research with intersexual individuals often aims to disentangle the biological and environmental determinants of behavior. The behavior gender differences which occur is a desperately existence between the average female and the average male, although there may be a large overlap between the two sexes. And what comes of this is what we might consider disorder of sexual development. At birth, some doctors would play God, determining if the child would be male or female, simply by the length of their phallus. About an inch, they were male. Less than an inch, they were female, and the doctors may determine in that moment how to manage the genitalia to support that assertion. The good news is that today some healthcare professionals are devising new standards of care to fight to end the shame, secrecy, and unwanted genital surgeries. Bringing our focus back to the female body, how does social power have anything to do with stereotyping about menstruation? Women begin menstruation with menarche. It's the first outward sign that the female body is capable and prepared for pregnancy. This can be many things for many women. And in some parts of the world, tradition dictates that once a woman has passed menarche, women must cover themselves from head to toe and wear a veil when in public or not go out at all. Let's look at some cultural beliefs about menstruation. The DSM can be a useful tool in assessing symptoms and dis-ease in an individual. Historically, it has also been used to pathologize people for simply being themselves. Up until 1973, homosexuality was a psychological disorder, and overnight, they were cured. Did something happen to these people? Did something happen to 10 to 20% of the population? Or did we as a society change our view? With the introduction of PMDD in the DSM-5, does this diagnosis turn women's normal physiological processes into a source of pathology as well? And as we look at what we call PMS, we turn to Dr. Joan Chisler, a well-regarded professor of psychology who has termed PMS a culture-bound syndrome. You see, PMS is not in the medical journals, it is not in the DSM. PMS stands for premenstrual syndrome. And to be a syndrome, there has to be a collection of symptoms and/or features of which a person falls into. Think about anything in the DSM. Unfortunately, what we know is that there are no two bodies of research that speak to PMS in the same way, from symptoms to duration. For some, it is any given day where your mood changes, to others being 30 days out of the month to 1 day out of the month. So if there is no medical scientific evidence that this exists, what could be the purpose? Dr. Chisler gives you a few examples. First, that is society's way of diminishing women, this idea that women are unable to manage things because of their menstrual cycles. To a subconscious use by women who do not have their own voice, that for a few days out of the month, they can express themselves and then later come back and hide behind something that they couldn't control. Regardless, it's something that we really need to understand and consider and know the difference between PMS, a culture-bound syndrome that is not scientific, and a woman's real menstrual cycle. We'll talk more about this in class. To be clear, women do have menstrual cycles, and our hormones do change over the month. To ovulate, to slough off the uterus lining if the egg is not fertilized. But there's no set rhythm for all women and no biological highs and lows that happen to women over the month. What you may not have known is that men also have a hormonal cycle. Theirs is just different. In 1999, Charlot and Associates looked at this in great detail. So instead of having a month-long hormonal cycle like women, men go through an entire cycle every 24 hours. Think about that for a minute. Men have about 10 times more testosterone levels than women, so their hormone cycles are usually all about the testosterone levels and how they affect them. Now we know that men's bodies also make estrogen and progesterone, but it's in really small amounts. So let's take a look at what we can expect on a daily basis for men. The middle of the night to the morning, high testosterone levels. It makes him more energetic, talkative, aggressive, focused, competitive, independent, impulsive, and confident. During these peak testosterone hours, he may be much more easily angered, be more likely to say no to any favor request. His virility is at an all-time high. So this is the best time for him to build something, compete in a contest, work on a solo project, or enjoy sex. His afternoon testosterone levels are in the middle of his cycle. He's a tad mellower than his morning self. As a result, he is upbeat, driven, and focused, but not as easily ticked off. This is the best time for him to work as part of a team, pitch clients or customers, brainstorm ideas, or go on a date. The evening finds him at his lowest levels of testosterone. And with testosterone bottoming out, he tends to be more passive, agreeable, and low-key, making this a good time to ask him for something. He may feel tired or fuzzy. This is the point where his libido hits its lowest point. For some men, this low point is still enough to make them capable of enjoying sex. Other men may feel too tired for intimacy or have difficulty maintaining erections. So this is the best time for him to either do activities that rejuvenate his energy if he wants a pick-me-up, or to enjoy relaxing activities, or even having a cuddle. So we now know that both men and women have hormonal cycles, and that they both have mood fluctuations. Research done by McFarland and Williams in 1994 obtained daily mood routines from men and women for 12 to 18 weeks to show that mood cycles were different for each individual and often did not match such expected patterns, but did show that men overall had larger mood variations and swings. And as we conclude our overview of the biology of being female and male, I just want to have you reflect on the next time you hear someone say something about women not being capable because they are moody. And this is my alter ego in absolute disbelief every time someone says that women are moody and over-emotional and men don't engage in any sort of drama.